All right, there's another part in this playing nice with batteries and inverters. I'm going to just probably do this in two parts, two takes, shall we say. Let's give you the scenario. 6 months ago, when I purchased the Samlex 4024, I spent a month trying to get it to play nice with the batteries that I've built. Again, this is with a dual BMS, but mainly with the Electrodocus. And so Samlex Evo 4024. So I was online before I purchased the inverter. I looked up the manual, and the reason why I wanted to do this inverter, because it had in the manual online stop charging and stop inverting controlled by lithium-ion battery management system, BMS. So solid state relays, and I thought, oh yeah, this is what I want to try. The word is and. It doesn't say and or, it says and. It really gave me the impression I could do, the communication would do both at the same time. So using the RJ45, and man, I thought, heck, I'll be able to set it up and easy peasy. I bugged Electrodocus a lot. I bugged Samlex a lot, and spoiler alert, I didn't get it to work the way I thought when I originally purchased it. So this is set up kind of the same way as I have the other ones, where I have the inverter and from the controls from the batteries, and it's telling the inverter, I think it's by just an open circuit. No, this is also by a voltage. So it's a low amperage, like milliamps, but it still has to see some type of voltage. And this one also has to see a voltage as well. So they're both kind of set up on the same, but two different signals. I wanted to stop charging, and this one I'm not telling the inverter to stop charging. I'm just disconnecting the power so it no longer has that. The problem I've come across, the fact is that even though I tell the inverter to turn off because it's a low battery state, SOC, if this sees AC, so this is a single phase, if it sees AC 120, it'll stay on. Even though the batteries are really low and it still wants to invert, and I told it to shut off, and that function has given the signal to the inverter, it's still trying to invert right to the point where it turns off, because it's turning off because you're using more power than you're putting in. And then the inverter, after a few minutes, it'll turn itself back on, because again, it still sees the AC source, and it tries to handle the load again, and then it shuts itself off. And I let it go for 30 times, and I never got it once to shut down. So if we keep this video, the puppy here is getting a little anxious because we have a lightning storm. But maybe this will just be good practice too. So let me just take you around what I've got here, and you shouldn't be too much in the way. I'm hoping that if I'm talking that I'll overtalk the lightning storm. Now, come on, camera. All right. So, as you can see, we've got power coming from the inverter. The signal, again, on the back. So, I've got the setup for two signals. And obviously I can have that set up for more if I want, just a larger pin count, and go to a 6 or an 8. So in this case, it's interesting. So they want this to go into the relay, and then from the relay that takes it to the 12 volt or other way around, and then it with that signal, then I'm telling it to shut off or to turn back on. And then over here with the other signal, so that's the cable, and then with the other signal here, I've got it going over to here with the inverter. Now I had to change the solid state relay from my last example. This one was still giving out 110 volts, even though there was no, even though it was turned off. There was no amperage coming through, but it still had its signal, and the other inverters were just fine with that, because again, I'm just disconnecting the source. So when I tell the inverter to shut off, it shuts off. Well, again, with this one, if it sees 110 volt, it doesn't really care about how much amperage it can see, but if it sees it, it turns itself, it keeps itself on. Let me go through the setup of this, but what I want to do is, I don't want to make a big deal of this, but I think there is one anomaly with this that makes it not as attractive, shall we say. And hopefully that maybe the Samlex will see this as well, and maybe I've done something wrong. I've gone through the manual, I've bugged the engineers, and they've given up even responding back to me. So the setup here, let me see, where do I start? So what I'm trying to mimic is having a 15 amp service, going into your inverter. You're at your RV, you're at your mower, you're only able to take in a little bit of power at 15 amps. Fine. And this is all designed for that. You can set how much power you're going to, that it can charge the battery, how much you can send to supplement, such as the 15 amp, a 30 amp, et cetera, up to 70 amps, I believe. Now, what I have it done is I have it completely toned down. I have it only 5 amps that I'm allowing it to charge at. And you'll see that that's what I've got at. 5 amps I'm charging at. And I'm only allowing it another 5 amps to supply to my load. So to supplement my load when I have it. So in order for me to use up more power, that's about 500 watts. All I got to do is do 700 watts, and then I start using by 200 watts more power than I'm putting in. And I feel that's it's just the difference. So even if you had a 15 amp, so you're using 1500 watts power coming in, that's great. But what happens if you have a couple of devices that are using 1700 watts? Eventually you're getting into a state where you're using more, your batteries are going to be absolutely completely dead. And I don't want an inverter to continuously go through a cycle, turning itself on, turning itself off, turning itself on, turning itself off. Now there is a workaround this, and this is a nice feature that I always wondered why that was there. So here's with the electric dockets. Let's just go through the setup here. So I need to get out, come on, and let's go to parameter setting, and let's go to advanced, and I want to just call out the under voltage is at 3 volts, and then under voltage recovery 3.11. I should have that a little bit higher, but just for this video. And then we have the under voltage lock, and that's at 2.92. And what happens with that is, so it'll shut, okay, don't forget, I have this set up for a high voltage disconnect. But the inverter is going to go through a low voltage disconnect, and you know, you don't want your inverter to normally shut off. You want it to stay on when it's in a high voltage, you know, when you're in a high voltage disconnect. And that high voltage disconnect just basically means I've taken away the AC, which then takes away its ability to charge. But in this case, I also want this to turn off so that this inverter is now no longer sees the AC and it doesn't go through this constant loop. And the beautiful feature of the BMS with that AC lock, so you're going to go through two almost low voltage disconnects. The first one is the regular one, and the other one is that lock. And it works the opposite way too in the high voltage lock. So, and either time it hits the lock, that means it turns off everything that you have on top of this. So if you had solar, which you should have, if you have lights that are set up through this device, things like that, everything gets disconnected just so that, and the nice feature of that is then it helps with a situation such as this. I doubt that's the reason why it was made that way, but it's going to work. It works for this type of a setup. So let's just turn on the load. We are in a pretty low state of charge. Okay. And again, I'm going to have this guy shut off when it hits the 3 voltage. Okay, so we got 30 amps. I might go all the way up to make it even faster. I think I just will do that. Okay, so we got this going all the way up. Oh, so we've already hit a low voltage disconnect. Okay, so now the inverter is already off. I'm going to actually take this and turn it down so it's not so inverter's off, and also the high voltage disconnect, turn itself off. I had the two close together. I shouldn't have turned it on the high voltage. I wanted to demonstrate the cycle that it goes on to. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to just put a little bit of a charge into the battery again, and we'll do that again, but this time I won't turn it on quite so high. And what I'll do is I'll probably just speed up this part of it. So I can't use, so as you can see, that's still off. I am charging right now, and once it hits that release point, then it turns everything back on again. And the trick is to turn the inverter. I'll just turn it right down, and I'll have it charging with this little guy here. I won't be able to use the inverter charger to charge because, again, it's in a complete shutdown. And we'll see if I can actually do any type of editing, but if I can then speed up some of these things so that these videos don't get quite so long. It's like I want to capture everything at the same time. Again, this inverter will turn on automatically once the BMS. Oh, and I should show you this too. So, okay, everything's coming back on. I missed that. I missed the faults. I wanted to show you the faults on the screen there. Okay, so now we're back on. And I will have to turn the charger off. Okay. So I'm going to turn this here. So monitoring, and then if I scroll, and then here's the page I wanted to show you. So this will show all the faults. So as of right now, all the faults are clear. This is the over voltage here, and this is the over voltage lock up here. So those two will turn on. Okay. All right. So let's turn the inverter on. So the inverter's on. I believe. We'll see. Okay. Oops. So the inverter's on. Should I go that high again? No, we won't go quite that high again. Okay. Okay, yeah, there was a click. That's probably the it charging. Again, I'm hoping to replicate the inverter turning itself on and off again. And you'll see that it's charging. Okay, there we go, low voltage, and it's off. And then it'll turn itself back on again because it sees the AC. And the only saving grace now will be the that lock. So again, it shut itself off. It still has AC coming in. It's still at 5 amps, but there's more power going out than going in. But eventually, it's going to get into the lock, and then the lock will completely disable it. And you might want this grace period because you might basically say, okay, I'm going to then go through my coach, and I'm going to shut down the loads that I'm using too much power. Okay. So that's how I kind of would set it up. I would have it set up so it maybe cycles a few times so I can catch it, and then instead of having the whole thing shut down. But you can do it either way, because eventually this is going to get into the lock voltage. And I can speed the process up if I just turn this up to the higher setting. So you've seen that cycle a few times. I'll let it cycle once more. Again, we're down to the 2.9. Okay, so battery low. But you see how that'll stay on? And it turns itself back on. So the battery's low. Hey, that's more power going out than coming in. So this is not a great feature, but the beauty of this is you can work around, you can resolve this issue with this inverter. And again, it's just this one because the other inverters don't do the same thing. Once you turn it off, it's off. This is all based on it seeing AC in. Okay, so it's cycled enough times. So let's just turn it up. Okay, and just like that, now we see basically now we hit the lock. So you know that voltage sag, right? To the 2.92, I think I have it set up at. So now everything's turned off, and nothing will turn itself back on again. You can't use this now to charge up the battery. You will have to use, just like in this case, a secondary charger. But again, this at least stops the cycle. It's cycling on and off if you're using up more power than you're putting in. Okay, now I wanted to break it here. I'll shut it down. And then basically I'm going to have these two batteries set up in a 48 volt with this character here. And should be a little bit less drama. And if hopefully Samlex will see this, and if I've done something wrong, I'll definitely look forward to changing it. But man, I've gone through the manual. There are setups for time-wise on low voltage disconnects, and I've played with the setting from one extreme to the other, and it made no difference. It just seems like if it sees AC in, there's nothing you can do about it. Just capturing that low voltage lock, okay?